In today's video, we're going to talk about how much to offer on an REO property. Purchasing an REO property, involves several steps, and these are properties that are owned by a bank after, failing to sell at the foreclosure auction. And we're going to cover kind of a detailed process on guide you through how to determine the values and making the best offer possible on these. In the second half of the video, you're going to learn simple steps that where you could implement and you could easily calculate an offer without paying too much. And by following these simple steps and conducting proper due diligence, you can successfully purchase REO properties below market values all the time. At the end of this video, you're going to be an expert on how much to offer an REO property, and we're going to teach you all the steps in the process. At Paul and I, we've purchased REO properties for decades across the nation, and we're going to take you behind the scenes here today and show you how we calculate and make offers. Paul, let's start off with just a quick synopsis of a 30-second overview on the foreclosure process on a foreclosure property versus an REO property, just to level set everyone.
Sure. So regular old property going to foreclosure would be going to different states. It's different, right? But the sheriff's sale in different states, where it goes to the courthouse, where they sell it, where they attempt to sell it, right? And a lot of times these aren't bought. So if an individual doesn't buy it or a company doesn't buy it, it then goes back to the bank, who is the mortgage holder. They then own that property. So that's where it goes to from the regular foreclosure process to the bank REO, and that's real estate owned by the bank.
Yep. And again, we have more videos on this topic that we could put in the description notes below, and if you dive into any of those videos to help you better understand the full process from A to Z. Next, let's talk about research and identifying properties where, let's start with a simple example. Someone's in a certain state and they could look for REO properties. What are avenues that you might share on where to find these for a certain area that they live in?
So besides the MLS, which they could use a local agent for, they could find some REOs there in the local market. They can also go on auction.com. They go on Hubzu, Hudson and Marshall, Realty Bid, Zome. And then just put a search, say they're in St. Louis, Missouri. Just type in St. Louis, Missouri, see what kind of properties come up, and then you can filter them because it'll show everything, right? Stuff that's in a foreclosure process, that's maybe a pre-foreclosure. Then you get the stuff that's a second chance auction, which is basically a HUD-owned property at that point, a HUD CWCOT. And then there's a regular traditional bank owned where it went through the whole process, and whether Chase or Fannie Freddie, or Wells Fargo, or one of the other banks has it. Those are going to be your best avenues to find bank REOs in your local area.
Yeah, those are all great sources that we've utilized over the years. Next, it's now that you identified your market, how do you start reviewing properties? First, it's just understanding what the property values are in a certain area. And we use a free tool called Zillow. Let's use an example real quick for everyone. You find a certain property that you like, a 4-bedroom, 2-bath home, 2,000 square feet. When you're comping it, make sure you're just looking at comparable properties that are within that development with the same bedroom square footage type. And then from there, you kind of get a flavor of totally newly renovated properties, what they sell for, and properties that are distressed and need a lot of improvements, essentially. It'll kind of give you the range on, where's does my auction property that I'm looking at fit within this realm of everything? And what am I trying to achieve here? Am I trying to rehab it? I know I have to put in so much money to get this value. So anything to add there on how to determine property values?
Yeah, it's great. And Zillow's a tool, like you said, we use all the time, and you can really filter it well. See, if you want to look at exact match property, a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, you could do that. And say this is a 2,000 square foot property, you could look at, set your parameters to 1,750 to like 2,250 to really hone in on a process. And you also look for something similar square footage as far as the lot is concerned. And then you can go to the age of the home, right? Mike, we do that a lot. So if this is a 1996 build, we want to look at something that's similar. We don't want to look at a 2020 build, right? Because that's not going to be apples to apples. But we also don't necessarily want to look at a 1910 build. So you can really set your parameters up to really search things and really hone in on it and get good numbers on it.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially in areas that have kind of mixed development. It wasn't just one major development that built the area. It's just properties over time filling up different lots. It's a great point there. Next is, all right, we kind of have an understanding of the property values. Now we have to determine what repairs or renovations are needed to get those values and any holding costs while I hold the property if my goal is to buy, renovate, and resell. So what are some things that you factor in from a holding cost perspective, Paul?
So from a holding cost perspective, we're looking at how long the length of the hold, right? We've lengthened ours now from a 4 to 6 month to up to a 9 month process, just allow for additional time, whether it's additional rehab time or just holding time because the market's a little slower depending on the time of year. You also have your real estate taxes, you have your insurance, you have your interest on your loan. Should it be an asset-based lender or private lender, or even if you just use your home equity line of credit, you got to factor that interest. All those go into your holding cost. You figure out what it's going to be over a 9 month period, and you make sure you're still going to be profitable with it.
And then you got to factor in, given our time, right? We have rules of thumb on just a full interior renovation. And then if it needs a roof, windows, landscape, HVAC system, we have additional costs on top of that. So as you assess properties, you kind of want to have an understanding on some of the repair costs and values and kind of rules of thumb on how to calculate that, as well as the holding costs. And that's something we could share in other videos that we'll put in the description notes below. Next, now that we have identified all the property values and the holding costs and repairs needed, what we do is we talk to local agents and kind of see what their thoughts are on and explain what we're trying to do and see if our analysis aligns with their analysis, because they might see something having boots on the ground doing real estate every day in that market where the market might be changing for good, bad, or worse. Paul, anything to add there on kind of verifying with local agents and market trends?
That's essential, right? And it's verifying with more than one because you never know what you're going to get. We try to do 3 agents if we can. And the best way to find those agents, whether you use Google or you can even look in Zillow and look for these small mom pop shops, not your Keller Williams, not your Remax, not your Century 21, not your big, Coldwell Bankers or anything like that. Look for somebody who's smaller, who's been there for a very long time. You can also check the HUDhomestore.gov and find really good agents there, and especially ones that have been in that market for a pretty long period of time, and ones that specialize in distressed properties, most importantly.
Yeah.
Those are your greatest resources. Get 3 different opinions. If you can get them inside the house, great. That's a big bonus because then they can give you idea of what repairs are needed, but also they can give you the as-is value and what the after repair value.
Yeah, and a pro tip would be if you get just say 2 agent responds back to you with market values. If one is a shotgun blast of comps throughout the town and one is a very targeted just of your development with the right square footage of beds, go with the latter. They clearly know how to comp properties, and they probably more versed on, where the market's heading, what values are on that development.
That is the truth. I mean, because we see all kinds of this, Mike. We see more over the past probably 5 years of people giving a shotgun blast than we have before that time period, and probably just because there's so many newer realtors out there as well. But before, we used to get more honed in, better comps than we have, and so now just finding people who do give you those. And when you find those people, you want to utilize them and try to repeat and do more business with them.
And then, lastly, now that you have all this data, it's time to formulate your offer. And a simple way to think about it is your offer price to the bank is essentially what you're trying to do. Let's just say you're trying to do a full scale rehab. So you know what properties at the top end are selling for after repair value, they call that. And let's just say that's 300,000. And then you factor in all the repairs and renovations that you need to get that. And again, let's just say repair cost is 40,000. And then you factor in from there any holding costs on top of the repair cost. And then how much money you want to make, ultimate profit. And then you take the 300, you minus your repair costs, you minus your holding costs, and then you minus out your profit that you want to earn dollar wise. And that's your offer. And a quick sanity check before you're submitting your offer is 2 things that we look at. One is the property actively listed also on the MLS? Because sometimes if it's an auction property, it's also listed on the MLS, but it's usually at an inflated value. And if that's the case, you want to make sure your offer is below list price is 1. And then 2 is banks sometimes have a reserve. If you could figure out what that reserve number is, your offer should be under that reserve amount as well. So those are just some 2 pro tips there before submitting your offer that you should double check on. Anything to add there, Paul?
That is essential. And then should you come to agreement and you actually have that number and have that set up and under contract, go on there and check and see how many active listings there are. Check on sold comps too. Check last 6 months and then go to 90 days to see if you have any variation, see if it's a declining market or an accelerating market. And it just gives you extra level of protection. Michael and I have done this on a couple of deals recently where all of a sudden a bunch of inventories popped up because maybe a bunch of jobs that were a big company that had a bunch of jobs in that area is leaving. So those are areas you don't want to be in. So make sure you do that extra level due diligence there as well.
And then finally, to wrap up, when submitting your offer, you got to make sure you have a proof of funds, essentially, or a pre-approval letter. So if you're buying yourself with cash, that's great. Just an image of your bank statement and disclosing that with your offer to the agent. If you're pre-approved by a hard money lender or asset-based lender, like such as a rehab or a 203K loan, FHA, you got to make sure you have that all pre-approval set up from those lenders as part of submitting your offer, or the bank won't take you seriously.
Yeah. And then you got to have that earnest money deposit, that cash available to be able to put that down there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be you. If you have a business partner that has money and has it, all you have to do is show that, right? And show that somebody's willing to lend you that money, have them write a letter that you're pre-approved for up to a certain dollar amount. And that's essentially going to be enough for you.
And then to end this video, if you're watching, I got a free gift for you all. It's called the REO Blueprint that me and Paul created. In this blueprint, it's basically going to walk you through in more detail the 7 steps that kind of take you from A to Z on finding, analyzing, and buying these REO properties. And again, that link will be in the description below.